This is just a short video to let you know that cornices now have the ability to use complex profiles for the cornice style. This applies to the regular cornice that you place on each edge of the ceiling, the freeform cornice that you can stretch around the room, and also the auto cornice that is associated to the slab using the Design Extras slab accessories option. So if we have a look at any of these cornices, what you'll find here is you've got your regular cornice styles that we've always had, and if you scroll right to the bottom, you've now got this option for custom complex profiles, in which case you can now choose a complex profile. Now I've set a few standard ones up in the template, which you can use the attribute manager to copy across, and watch the video on attribute manager to find out how to copy them across if you haven't done that before. But what we can do now is we can choose any of these complex profiles. Now some of these are not going to be applicable because they're used for other objects, but all of these ones here that have been assigned as a complex profile for an object can be used. In particular, we're obviously interested in the cornice ones, so I've set up a coved cornice, simple cove. I've set up the gyprock alto, which is just a bit of a square profile, one that we don't have as standard, and the gyprock classic, which is quite a common profile to use as well. So you can just simply come in here and choose the profile that you want. By default, it will use the material for the complex profile as the complex profile is set up. So it will use that material there, but you can override it and say, no, I want to choose a particular material. All we have to do is say OK. And it's exactly the same in each one of these. Obviously these just probably set out a little bit differently. The material is up here on this one for the freeform, but otherwise it's exactly the same, uses the same profiles, and the auto cornice is exactly the same as well. So you have all your standard profiles and you can choose the profile that you want to use. As I say, just slightly rearranged to suit the display of each one. But once you've said OK, what you'll find now is, if we look at that in 3D, you've now got nicely profiled cornices. So you can see here you've got the profile. They work exactly the same as your regular cornices as they've always done before, but now with the new profiles. There's one slight bug. You'll see this is the same profile as the classic, gyprock classic style. You'll see here it's all nice and smooth and there's no extra lines. For some reason, when you use the one that is associated to the slab, so the auto cornice, because it's associated to the slab, for some reason it wants to put an extra line in here, and I don't know why that is. If ever I can work out the reason, I'll fix it, but for now we just have to put up with it. Now the important thing is with the complex profile, so they're just like any other complex profile, so we can go into the profile manager, come in here, and we can set up our own, so you can create new profiles if you want to, or we can look at the existing ones. I'll look at the gyprock classic. If I come in here and edit that profile, what's important is that the profile origin is the top right hand corner. So it's a cornice, so we want it to hang under the ceiling, so that's our ceiling level at the top there. So we need the profile to be below, and as with all the other profiles for walls, etc., we use the origin and draw the profile to the left. So for a cornice, we'll come down to the lower left hand corner. And I've put some notes here just to explain some basic principles. So create the cornice to the lower left hand corner, which we just said. If you want a curved cornice, you must use curved surfaces. If you do this out of straight lines, everywhere you have a straight line, you will see that straight line effectively in the 3D of the cornice. So straight lines, when they join, will always draw a line along the length of the profile when you place it. If you do it as curves, so you can see here I've just created this out of curves, you should find that it will all blend in nice and neatly, except there's that problem with the auto accessory, the auto cornice. For some reason one of these nodes is getting drawn as a line, and I don't know why, but it's only when you use it as the auto accessory, and it's not a big deal. If you deliberately want to create a line, then what we need to do is just create two nodes, and that's what this is saying here. So whenever a curve joins a straight edge, or if a curve joins another curve, and you want to create a node, then make a small 0.15 millimeter straight edge. That's about as small as you can go. If you go any smaller, then it's very fiddly to try and draw. If you go much bigger, then you're going to start to see it on your elevations. Well, you could probably go up to 0.1 millimeters without any problem, but eventually you'll see double lines. So what that means is that at this edge, because I've got a curve joining a straight edge, I definitely want to see a hard line, so I've just created two nodes. That's as far as I can zoom in. That's what I mean by 0.15 is probably as small as you want to go before you have trouble trying to draw it. It's just a case of adding that extra node there, and you'll find the same on this side here. I've got the extra node, and here these are just single nodes because I don't want the line, and the same for the top and bottom here. So the top and the bottom, I've got the 0.015 extra node, and that just forces it to draw a line. The curves will come out as smooth curves, and that's the same for any of the profiles. So if I look at the cove ceiling, same deal here. I've got the curve joining the straight line. I want to make sure that I've got a node there. I'm just being cautious here and doing this. Sometimes you don't need it, sometimes you do. It's just a bit of an experiment. It depends on how the profile is being viewed. When it comes to something like this, the Duke Rock Alto, which is just all a straight cornice anyway, you don't need the extra nodes. So you can see here I've just got the single nodes on the corners. I've left the lines in here just as an example, as a bit of a guide, a template. When you're creating these complex profiles, you can use one of these and just modify it to the profile that you want, or you can just start with a new one and create your own. Now the building material that you use for the profile, or the fill, it is a fill, but with complex profiles it uses a building material. These building materials have their own material and surface set up. So I've used a plasterboard, so it's got a paint one colour or surface attached to it. So it will use that by default, which you can override in the cornice settings as I showed you before. Or of course you can come in here and you can override it here, and you can choose any colour that you want to use. Or you can actually select a particular edge and you come in here into the pet palette, and you can override that edge and choose any colour that you want. So effectively you could actually have every surface, every edge of this cornice a different colour if you really wanted to. And the complex profile, when you use it, will do exactly that. That's really all there is to it. So it's just a case of now using your cornices as normal. Whenever you want a complex profile, you can come into here and use complex profile, set your own profile up. If you want extra ones added to the template, let me know and I can add them. Obviously you've got your existing profiles here that you can use. They all work just the same. But now you have the ability of creating your own custom profiles. Everything else about the cornice works exactly as it was before. So with not this one so much because it's just a single cornice, but with these ones you can, if you do get the profile back to front, you can still, I don't know if they'll show you here, but you can still flip the cornice and the cornice will actually flip around the other way. Everything works exactly as it was before. Even with this one here, you can actually place holes in the slab and the cornice will go around the hole. So that's all there is to the new cornices. Enjoy. As an added bonus with the complex profiles for cornices, we can also use those complex profiles in the beam tool. So when we choose our beam tool, which is here, we can choose to set a complex profile and then choose any of the profiles that we've got set up. The thing you need to watch for is that in the profile, when you set the profile up, just make sure that the beam tool is active so that you can use it with beams. The object tool must be active if you want to use it with objects such as the cornices, and you could even use it in railing tools if you've got the railing option active. And if you really want to, you can also set it for walls and columns as well. Not that you would ever need to use a cornice profile in that situation. Best to use a beam rather than a wall, because walls will automatically trim with each other when you touch two walls together. So a cornice touching a regular wall will often cause a trimming problem. So you're much better to use a beam and a wall. So use the beam for the cornice and obviously the wall for the wall. With the beams, by default you'll find that beams show with a wide dotted perimeter line and an axis line. You might want to change that so that it shows more like you would expect a cornice to show. Not that we show the cornices in plan anyway, so it's not super important, but it makes it easier to spot on plan. So that's just your floor plan settings. So you can see here, if I go into the settings for this one here, it's got a wide dotted line for the overhead or the outline. So we can just change that to a solid line. And if you don't want to see the axis, the reference line, we can turn that off. There's an option here, always hide reference axis. We can turn that off in there, and the beam will basically look as it does for a regular cornice. The advantage of beams is beams will automatically trim when they join together, or when the beams touch, when the reference lines touch, the beams will automatically trim. You can also control in the settings, you can control the end angles of the beams, so we can actually control the beams as to whether they're vertical, perpendicular, custom angles. You can also stretch them all in 3D as well. So if I was to look at that beam in 3D, you can select it, click on the end, and you've got pet palette option here for rotating the join angle, so you can actually change the angle of the mitre on the end of the beams, and you can do all sorts of things to get them to join together. But as I say, they should join together automatically when you touch two beams together. Of course, beams can also curve. We can take that beam, click on the reference side here, and we can use the curving options to curve that beam horizontally, and in 3D you can also curve that cornice vertically, so you can have an arched cornice if you need to. The other thing you can do with beams is, if we look at this in 3D, which I've got a little cornice just stuck on the edge of the wall there, being that it's a beam, I can take that beam and I can simply angle. If I need to use that as a gable end or a raking ceiling, I can just simply choose either end and move them up and down. Also, if you click on a cornice, you can also rotate the cornice, so I can actually rotate that cornice to suit raking ceilings and things as well. Now that will require some movement back to the wall, which I will explain in another video that I'm going to talk about raking cornices for raking ceilings. So have a look in that, and that will explain how to adjust these.